there is a car driving through the streets of Los Angeles right now that almost nobody riding in it fully understands. It picks you up outside a coffee shop. It knows your name. It knows exactly where you're going. And if you ask it, it will even tell you a story about the building you're passing. It feels like the future arrived quietly, without an announcement, without a keynote, just a notification on your phone that says your ride has arrived. But underneath that calm, polished experience is one of the most complicated, most politically loaded supply chains in modern technology. And almost none of the people stepping into these vehicles have any idea what they're actually sitting inside. This week, Waymo, the self-driving subsidiary of Alphabet, opened its newest Robotaxi to every single rider in Los Angeles, Phoenix, and San Francisco. The vehicle is called the Ojai, and on the surface, it looks like just another update, a nicer car, a smoother app, a smarter assistant. But if you actually follow the thread of where this vehicle comes from, how it gets built, and why it exists in this specific shape, you start to see something much bigger. You start to see how an American AI company builds hardware in a world where the two most powerful economies on Earth are actively working against each other. And that is exactly what we're going to unpack today. Let's start with the number that should stop you in your tracks. Waymo currently operates around 300 of these Ojai vehicles in active commercial service. That sounds modest, but according to MoffettNathanson, a research firm that tracks vehicle imports by analyzing shipping and customs data, Waymo is on pace to bring 5,000 of these vehicles into the United States by the end of this year. 5,000. That is more than double the size of Waymo's entire existing fleet of modified Jaguar I-Pace vehicles, the white sensor-covered hatchbacks that have become the face of the company for years. And in July alone, 725 of these vehicles entered the country. Read that pace again. Not over a year. Not over a quarter. 725 vehicles in a single month. That is not a pilot program anymore. That is not testing. That is industrial-scale deployment. And it tells you something important about where Waymo is placing its bet for the next phase of its existence, which is no longer about proving that autonomous driving works. It's about proving that autonomous driving can make money. So what actually is this vehicle? Strip away the sensors, strip away the software, strip away the branding, and the Ojai is a minivan. Specifically, it's built by Zeekr, a Chinese electric vehicle brand owned by Geely Holding Group, the same conglomerate that also owns Volvo. Waymo partnered with Zeekr back in 2021 to design a vehicle from the ground up specifically for ride-hailing, not a retrofitted commuter car, but a purpose-built robotaxi. It sits on Zeekr's SEAM platform, an evolution of the company's sustainable experience architecture, engineered specifically for vehicles like robotaxis and delivery vans. This is a genuinely smart engineering decision. Instead of taking a car designed for a driver and stripping the steering wheel out of it, Waymo worked backward from the actual use case: wide sliding doors, flexible interior space, durability for near-constant use, lower manufacturing cost per unit. On paper, this is exactly what a rational company should do if its long-term goal is profitability at scale. But here's where the story stops being a simple hardware upgrade and becomes something much more interesting. When Waymo signed this partnership in 2021, the relationship between the United States and China looked completely different than it does today. By the time these vehicles were actually production-ready, vehicles built in China were facing tariffs of over 100%. Think about what that actually means for a company trying to build a scalable, low-cost robotaxi fleet. Every single unit that crosses the border becomes dramatically more expensive the moment it clears customs, purely because of where it was manufactured, with zero relationship to the quality or the technology inside it. So Waymo had to get creative, and the workaround is honestly one of the more fascinating pieces of modern industrial engineering. The base Zeekr vehicles are shipped to the United States completely stripped of any Chinese connected car technology. No onboard software tied to Chinese servers, no proprietary Chinese infotainment systems, nothing. They arrive essentially as an empty shell of a vehicle, a rolling chassis with seats. From there, they're sent to Waymo's own factory in Arizona, where American engineers install the entire self-driving system, the the sensors, the compute hardware, and the software stack that actually makes the car autonomous. In other words, Waymo built an entire domestic assembly operation specifically to take foreign hardware and Americanize it before it ever picks up a passenger. This is not a footnote. This is a genuinely important case study in how global technology companies are learning to navigate a world where hardware, software, and geopolitics are no longer separate conversations. You cannot understand modern AI infrastructure, whether it's chips, batteries, or robotaxis, without understanding trade policy, because trade policy is now a design constraint just as real as battery range or sensor accuracy. Now let's talk about what actually happens once you're inside the car, because this is where things get technically interesting in a different way. The Ojai comes with Waymo's 6th-generation self-driving system, which the company describes as modular, meaning the same core technology stack can theoretically be deployed across different vehicle types in the future, not just this one minivan. That modularity is a strategic decision, not just an engineering one, because it means Waymo isn't betting its entire future on a single vehicle design. If Zeekr becomes politically or economically unworkable, the underlying self-driving brain can, in theory, move to a different chassis. And Waymo has already hedged this exact bet by separately partnering with Hyundai to use Ioniq 5 vehicles as an alternative platform. But the feature getting the most attention right now isn't the driving system at all. It's Gemini, Google's AI assistant, now built directly into the cabin. Press the Gemini icon on the screen, and you can talk to the car the way you'd talk to a smart speaker. Ask it to turn the air conditioning down to 65 degrees, and it adjusts the climate. Ask it what that building is outside your window, or what the history of a nearby landmark is, and it gives you a real answer, powered by a live conversational AI model, not a fixed list of pre-programmed responses. This is genuinely a meaningful shift in how people are going to interact with autonomous vehicles, because for years the entire pitch of self-driving cars was purely functional. Get from point A to point B without a human driver. Now Waymo is explicitly designing for the emotional and psychological experience of the ride itself, treating the AI assistant almost like a concierge whose entire job is to make an empty front seat feel less unsettling. But here's the detail that matters most, and it's the one most coverage of this story glosses over. Gemini and the Waymo driver, the actual system controlling the vehicle's movement, are completely, deliberately separated. Gemini cannot steer the car. It cannot change the route. It cannot access real-time driving data. If you ask it to speed up, slow down, or change direction, it simply can't do it, because architecturally it was never given that capability in the first place. This is not a limitation born out of laziness. This is a very intentional safety and liability decision. In an industry where a single high-profile crash can set public trust back years, the last thing any company wants is a chatbot with any pathway, however indirect, into the vehicle's control systems. So Waymo built two completely separate AI systems, living inside the same physical car, one whose entire job is safety-critical driving, and one whose entire job is conversation and comfort, and they made absolutely sure those two systems never talk to each other. That architectural choice tells you something important about where the AI industry as a whole is heading. The era of one giant AI model doing everything is quietly giving way to an era of specialized, siloed AI systems, each with a narrow, well-defined job, deliberately kept separate from systems that carry higher risk if something goes wrong. Expect to see that same pattern repeated across robotics, healthcare AI, and industrial automation over the next few years. Not one all-powerful assistant, but a network of narrow specialists that don't cross their own lanes. Now, zoom out for a second, because this story isn't happening in isolation. While Waymo is quietly scaling toward 5,000 vehicles and expanding into new cities including Denver, Las Vegas, and San Diego later this year, the other company most associated with the phrase Robotaxi is telling a very different story. Tesla has spent months running a small geofence pilot in Austin, Texas, years after promising a nationwide autonomous ride-hailing network. The contrast is stark, and it's not really about marketing anymore. It's about execution. Waymo has already crossed from vehicles you occasionally spot on the street into vehicles being manufactured, imported, and deployed at genuine industrial scale in 11 American cities and counting, while investing engineering resources into refining the passenger experience rather than proving the core technology works at all. That gap matters because in the AI and robotics race, the company that moves from demo to deployment first tends to define the rules everyone else has to follow. There's also a quieter economic story hiding inside all of this, and it's arguably more important than any single feature. For years, the biggest criticism of robotaxis wasn't whether the technology worked, it was whether the business math worked. Every Jaguar I-Pace Waymo converted into a robotaxi started life as a regular consumer luxury vehicle, then had to be retrofitted with an expensive sensor suite, a process that is inherently costly and inefficient at scale. A purpose-built vehicle like the Ojai flips that entire equation. When you design the car and the autonomy stack together from day one, you cut redundant hardware, simplify manufacturing, and bring the cost per vehicle down in a way that retrofitting simply cannot match, even with tariffs eating into the savings. That's the real significance of this rollout. It's not just a nicer car with a chatbot in it. It's Waymo's first real attempt to build a robotaxi the way an airline builds a plane, purpose-designed for the job it will do every single day for years, rather than adapted from something that was never meant to do that job in the first place. And there's a bigger question sitting underneath all of this that most people aren't asking yet. What does it mean for critical transportation infrastructure, the vehicles carrying millions of Americans every year, to depend on a manufacturing pipeline that runs through a country the United States government currently treats as its most significant strategic rival? Waymo's answer, at least for now, is architectural separation. Keep the physical vehicle and the intelligence layer on different sides of a hard boundary. Import the shell, build the brain domestically, and never let the two blur together. Whether that's a durable long-term strategy or a temporary workaround for a tariff environment that could shift again with the next election cycle is genuinely an open question. And it's one every company building physical AI products, from robotaxis to humanoid robots to delivery drones, is going to have to answer eventually, because the era of assuming your supply chain is politically neutral is already over. So, where does this actually leave us? A Chinese-designed minivan, stripped and rebuilt on American soil to dodge a tariff war neither company created, but both have to survive. A Google AI model riding shotgun, deliberately blindfolded from the systems that actually drive the car, purely to protect against the one mistake that could end public trust overnight. And a scaling curve that went from 300 vehicles to a projected 5,000 in under a year, quietly, without the kind of headline-grabbing launch event you'd expect from a technology this significant. This is what the real AI economy looks like right now. It's not just a chatbot answering questions on your phone. It's a physical, geopolitical, deeply engineered system, moving real people through real cities, built by threading a needle between two of the most powerful economies on the planet. The next time one of these cars pulls up outside your building, quiet, white, sensor-covered, and asks if you're ready for your ride, you'll know exactly what's actually sitting underneath that friendly voice, and exactly how much had to go right and how much had to be carefully hidden just to get it there.